Let's go over the rostering system for the game. Now in front of you is an automated rostering system, which is certainly available for the players if they so wish to utilize it. Of course, it can be always done by hand, but the information that's required to put down on a hand roster would be very tiresome, so it's recommended that you go to an automated system to be preferable for all players. Also, hey, penmanship is not what it always used to be. Now what we have is a sample Austrian corps that's in front of us. About 1809 period, nothing unusual about it. But the key thing is the rostering is broken down into various component sections. In this upper area, this is known as the headquarters section. And in this case, we have the Austrian 2nd Corps, commanded by Kilowatt, and these are his ratings as we can see here, an indication that this is a corps headquarters. In this field, you would put attached units like sapper battalions, or in the case of the Austrians, it would be pioneer battalions, or any other unit that's attached to headquarters. And there's only a certain amount of space for how many figures you can attach to headquarters. The limitation is a total of 20 figures in a headquarters command. Underneath this is attached headquarters artillery. In this case, they have a 12-pound positional battery. And then you have your ammo train, and then you have the accounting for the baggage train, so the relevant corps headquarters. Below that we have an infantry division, and below that there's another infantry division, and then we have some cavalry divisions further down on the sheet, which I will pan down to later. Now how the information is presented is as follows. Here you identify in this column all the way down the name of the unit. In this particular, you're going to identify the actual type of, in this case it's an infantry division, with a respective officer. And in this particular example, this officer is no combat value on the tabletop. He's just there basically having a bad day. So that's why we typically highlight that in yellow, to make it easier for the players to identify which officers are good for morale and combat situations. Otherwise, you identify the unit in this column. In this case, we have the 50th Infantry Regiment, Graf Stan. Its combat morale rating is 6 in this particular case, and its structure is 3 units of 9 figures each. It's not any cavalry, so we're not going to put any marks in the cavalry boxes. And out here on the right, there's no additional things that need to be nomenclated, because this is just an ordinary line battalion. Its point value in the calculation is 162 points, and its MFP value is calculated to be 9. Refer to the MFP training segment on how to do calculations, and refer to the point value segments on how to do the point value calculations. Otherwise, the system will do it automatically for you. A little further down, we have a Grenzer battalion, or in this case, a Grenzer regiment. Morale grade 6, 3 battalions of 8 figures each. But notice I put a little X out here under the open order column. That means this unit has got a capacity or capability of performing open order. Further down under this division, we have the artillery which is being attached. In this case, they have 2 brigade 6-pounders. Their combat values, morale rating is a 7. They've got 8 cannon, 1 crew member, and they cost 3 points per cannon. And we should have indicated here that they were foot batteries. Obviously, I omitted doing that. And then out to the right, the system will automatically calculate the ammo supply for those relevant batteries, their point cost, and the MFP value. Further down, we have an advanced guard type command. Here we have some cavalry regiments, the Schwarzenberg Uhlans, combat morale of 7, 8-figure size unit, but being cavalry I have to indicate its weight classification, which in this case is light. Point value is MFP. A little further down we have a Jaeger battalion. Combat value of 7, 8-figure strength. Again, they're open order formation, so we have to indicate it. But notice I didn't put the word rifle under this. The Jaegers have some of the figures of rifles, but the entire battalion is not marked or carries rifles. Therefore, I don't put the X. To be marked with a specialist ability or with a rifle ability, every figure in the unit must have it. Same thing applies to open order. If only one figure, i.e. the Voltige or Skirmisher Company, is open order, but the rest of the line figures do not go in open order, you wouldn't use the open order column. This means the entire battalion is at capacity. Let's go on to some other of these areas here too. For the cavalry weight, this is cuirassier. This is heavy, medium, or second-rate battle cavalry. Think French dragoons here. Light cavalry, irregular cavalry. If there's a regimental artillery piece attached to the unit, you would make an X here. If they're A-class firers, you would put an X here. If they're lowly C-class firers, you put an X under this column. If they're 2-rank line, you have an X reflective there. We've already covered open order, but also if they happen to be dismounted infantry, or dismounted cavalry in this case, you would put a mark there. Specialist ability, rifle. If they're rated as veteran troops, if they're rated as green or conscript. Converged elites means you've taken this battalion and created it out of elite companies from other battalions. And you combine the actual elite companies into a common unit. If you happen to be armed with sword, spear, javelin, or anything else weird like that, there's a little mark here. And last but not least, if you're doing a morale grade change, this would be when you're going from like a line grade unit of a 7 up to a morale grade of 8, which changes you into a classification of an elite unit. Because you're a veteran, for instance, you'd have to put a mark here because that costs extra. Now, a little further down, we've got the batteries of artillery again. Combat morale of 7. 8 cannons in the battery, or in this case, there's only 6 in a cavalry battery. The points per cannon, and here I properly marked the horse and the foot indications. And again, over here for the artillery, you would have, is it a guard or Royal Horse Artillery rated unit? Because if so, they get up a 5th again. Are they A-class firers or are they C-class firers? Are they veteran artillery? Generally, you're never going to see green artillery per se, because the artillery is not a common thing. But they might be towed by oxen, or it might be a militia-rated unit. Or it could, in theory, be irregular. Cossacks had artillery batteries, so they could be irregular. And again, the respective ammunition supply and points and MFP. Now, once you fill these things out, the system's automatically going to calculate how many total figures you have in your command. If you add up all these numbers here, it will come to this value here. Figure total is 107 figures. This is a fairly large division. Most divisions are typically between 60 and 80 figures. So this is a big one. And then you need to calculate the 20, 40, or 60% loss levels, because once you reach 20% figure loss in the command, i.e. in this case 21 figures, all the figures remaining on the tabletop are down 1 morale. If you got 40, you're down 2. If you're at 60, you're down 3. Pretty much you're going to be breaking from the field if you ever take morale checks if you get above 40% loss. It's just all over. And this is a summation of the point cost and a summation of the MFP cost for that particular command. So in a nutshell, this is the whole divisional command, and it's on a roster sheet. This is the corps or officer, senior, army, nation, they're all similar. Even an artillery command can be similar to this. And you have a mixed advanced guard type command, which has got infantry and cavalry. Or you can actually have just a pure cavalry type command, which is like down here on the bottom. Again, identify the command, the officer, units in the command, how big they are, and their morale rating, what type of unit they are if they're cavalry, and any of the supportive information you need. It's all inclusive and very accurate. And last but least, let's go back to those officers again. What do these values represent? Well, this is Norman. He was the advanced guard commander. If he was a corps or higher level senior officer, this first value would apply if he's directly attached to the unit. So he would be a +2. Otherwise, if he's a divisional or brigade level officer, it's the second value, and that's his value if he's attached to the unit, +1. In addition, his radius value, the 9-inch zone around him, he's also giving an influence of +1 for morale. So players are very strongly recommended to have their officers well placed on the battlefield to always take benefits of these radius values. And in shock combat, the shock combat value is equal to whatever is relevant rank for the tabletop is today. Today he's being a divisional commander, so therefore it's 1 from that 1. If he happened to have been a corps level commander, this value out here would have been a 2. The scale of the game for the rating is basically 0 to 3. Now if you have a 0 value here, for instance if there's a 0 on the radius typically, you can have a 1, 1, 0, let's say. then that basically means he gives no value on the radius, only if he's attached. He's a pretty piss poor officer. But let's go up here and look at Hesse-Homburg for this particular scenario. If you notice carefully, he zeroes all the way across the board. He didn't make his roll for the day. When we cover the officers' tables, you'll understand what I mean by that. But basically, he's having a bad day, was inefficient, was drunk, was unresponsive, didn't react to the action of the table. Whatever it is, he was just basically not operating as a true blown officer for the day. So consequently, his values are reduced. They go down 1 across the board, but since his ratings obviously didn't have a number bigger than 1, they all became zeros. And consequently, for shock combat, he adds no benefit at all. And also, in addition to this, notice he doesn't even give a radius value either. So he's basically a dumpkin on a horse, shall we call it. Players are known to go off and get these types of officers killed at the first opportunity, so hopefully on their re-roll for an officer, they might get an improvement and maybe get an efficient brigade commander promoted as the divisional. That could be a viable tactic, but keep in mind, if Hesse-Homburg gets killed or wounded on the tabletop, you just contributed 5 MFP points towards your total, so it's not necessarily a good idea to go bumping off your officers, shall we say. Last but least, we mentioned ammunition. And here we got a 12-pounder which has got 10 round shot and 2 case shot. Well, these little boxes underneath are the indication for the accounting of the shot themselves. The first few boxes to the left side of the double star is the round shot, and to the right is the 2 case shot, and identifies the name of the battery here. It's quite common for players to actually write the actual number of the actual battery piece in pen or pencil or something next to the name here, so that we can match up on the tabletop what the actual battery is. Once, of course, you've marked off all these boxes, then the gun is considered to be low on ammunition, and it will be firing at 1/4 effectiveness until it gets a reload from the train, which up here is indicated under the corps roster. And it gets a certain number of reloads based upon how many batteries it has under that command. This, in summary, is a quick recap of the rostering system, or the roster, or the information that's required to be put on a roster so the player has accurate information at the time of the battle on the tabletop.